welcome into another edition of Cover One, the podcast. Erik and John here along with me, Nate Geary, coming at you just about 24 hours after the official announcement of Sean McDermott as the 20th head coach in Buffalo Bills history. And we've got some reaction and some film study we wanted to throw your way to educate you on your new head coach before he officially gets sworn in tomorrow afternoon, a 2 p.m. press conference that you'll be able to hear live on WGR. I'm sure live streaming at all the major news sources as well. So that'll be coming at you tomorrow, 2 p.m. live from the Fieldhouse. Expecting a little bit different of an atmosphere as we got 2 years ago. I don't know what you guys think, but I don't think there's going to be any sort of prediction of playoffs or, cough, cough, is this thing on? I don't think anything like that's happening this time.
No mic drop moments?
No mic drops.
Oh, that's kind of disappointing, but not really.
Yeah, no. A little bit more, I think, of a conservative approach, a lot like what Ian Rappaport said yesterday on NFL Network, which is this is basically the anti-Rex Ryan in just about every single facet of his coaching style. Just his pedigree and the way that he kind of approaches not only the game, but life itself. And I know, for one, I'm excited about this new chapter in Bills history. I really like the hire a lot. And I know that I think we all can kind of agree on it, that it's a step in the right direction. And it's maybe a step in the different direction than this Bills organization has taken over the past few coaching hires. A guy that I think is going to be cut from the same type of cloth that Doug Marrone was, more of a disciplinarian, but a player, a guy that I think maybe relates to the players a little bit better than Doug Marrone did just coming out of college.
Definitely. The thing I like about the hire is, he comes from, like you said, kind of like a pedigree. Well, he comes from a great coaching tree, Andy Reid, the Jim Johnsons, and, he even learned a different facet of, defense when he was with Carolina with the, zone defense, more of a zone-based defense. So I do like the scheme that he brings. It is aggressive, even though it was kind of, more zone in Carolina, but it is still aggressive. And he does that in so many different ways. But he also tailors, the defense to his players, unlike Rex Ryan, where Rex Ryan was trying to just fit players in his scheme, which we all know it's great if you have those players. But if one of those or two of those players go down, then it's going to be a lot harder for that defense to adjust. So I do like the scheme he brings and the mentality, and he's young. And that's what I like too is, they're thinking long-term. We want to give this guy the full contract, let him and Doug Whaley work together. So John, how do you feel about the hire, man?
I like it. I was on the fence at first, but the more I kind of researched them, and the better I feel about it. Like you said, from the Jim Johnson tree and Andy Reid, so on and so forth. And his defenses the last several years have been pretty lights out. Granted, he had some pretty special players on that Carolina team, and that certainly helps. But nonetheless, I think he's got the pedigree, like you mentioned before, and we'll see where it goes. I'm interested to see how these coordinators play out too.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the point too, John, that I think we're all going to have to try to kind of go with here. And Erik just told me right before we came on that there's a new report of a defensive coordinator potentially. Originally, the widely reported name was Al Holcomb, the current linebackers coach with the Carolina Panthers. Now it appears that the defensive backs coach for the
Ravens.
Did you say? The Ravens, that's right. The Ravens, and a familiar name in Leslie Frazier, who was an interim head coach with the Vikings a few years ago before they brought in Coach Zimmer, Mike Zimmer. And then he also ultimately ended up taking over as head coach, bringing them to a playoff. So he's always kind of been known as a really good defensive mind. He also comes from the Andy Reid and Jim Johnson coaching tree as well. So as we're seeing here, we may see more. Juan Castillo, he just signed on as the offensive line and running backs coordinator as well. So you're seeing a lot of Andy Reid coaching tree decisions here and replacement coaches. And, you're not really picking from a bad tree here. When you're talking about Andy Reid, you're talking about one of the most consistent coaches in really the past 2 decades of the NFL. Not only offensively, but his teams just they play well. He's a consistent 10 to 11 win guy every year. And that's the kind of mentality I think that needs to be brought into Buffalo.
You're right. And I do like, that name, Leslie Frazier, because like you mentioned, it is, he's a guy that was groomed in the Philly system as well. He was there from 99 to 2002, had a couple of years in Cincy and bounced around for a few years, but eventually ended back in Minnesota as a DC and then eventually becoming the head coach for a few years. But, he's one of those guys that is like McDermott. You know, they were raised in the system, and those type of systems. When you're groomed in a certain system, you know, most of the time, those kind of coaches, you know, are the good coaches because they know the ins and outs of not just one position, not just the DBs. They usually, you know, start in one position and then move up to linebacker coach, and after linebacker coach, up to, you know, D-line coach, and then eventually they become the next coordinator as guys are groomed and go, you know, move on to head coaching jobs. So, and he's just like McDermott. You know, he put his time in the system. He knows this system. And I think it would be a great hire. I mean, I don't know too much about Holcomb, the linebackers coach for Carolina, besides stuff that, you know, you could just read on the internet. But as far as, you know, what he would bring, and, I mean, obviously it seems like he gets like, you know, a lot of good words and praise from his players. So that's always a good thing, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about a unit. I mean, that is potentially one of the better linebacking corps in the league. I mean, you have Davis, you've got Kuechly. You know, these are guys that, you know, if it wasn't for Thomas Davis's terrible knee injuries, he had 3 in a row.
Yeah.
You're looking at one of the more consistent, one of the better linebackers in the league. So, I mean, either way you twist it, it looks like they're going to get what they want defensively. And now it's really offensively that I think we were talking a little bit before we went on too, that continuity and stability at the offensive coordinator position, I think, is going to be critical in who they choose if Mike McCoy ultimately doesn't decide to come here to Buffalo.
Right, and you know, go ahead,
Erik,
John.
you think if McCoy doesn't become the next offensive coordinator, which there's a good possibility he may not, the question is do they retain Lynn? Can they even go that route? I mean, is that like putting, you know, your tail between your legs and coming back? I don't know, you know. So it'll be interesting because our offense really wasn't the problem last year, right. You know. And obviously there's a big, huge concerns as far as who's going to be the quarterback, because at the end of the day, who cares who the offensive coordinator is if we don't have a stable quarterback?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, that's my opinion at least. So, you know, there's a lot of work to do on the offensive side as far as just identifying who we're going to keep, and then obviously, you know, bring in the appropriate coordinators.
And honestly, I don't know if Lynn, the way things are going, just that hire today of Castillo, to me, that sends a signal to me that they may be moving on from Lynn altogether.
Yeah.
You know, they're bringing on a new offensive line coach. We have a fantastic offensive line coach in Aaron Cromer. So the fact that they're moving in that direction and he's going to be in charge of the run game, to me, it kind of sends a signal like they are already moving past Lynn. You know, that's what kind of worries.
Is it possible Cromer might get?
That was a name, John. That's a good name. That's someone I thought of immediately when I saw him essentially fill Cromer's role. I mean, that's what he did. He was a run game coordinator and offensive line coach. That's definitely a name. Bill Musgrave, I think, is another name to kind of pay attention to over the next few days. But I would like to see them fill this position as quickly as possible.
Definitely, and it's and like you said, it's the continuity would be nice, but I think at this point, I don't see that happening. I think there's going to be big changes on both sides of the ball. I mean, it seems like that kind of year, you know?
Yeah. No, and as far as continuity goes, I almost think going with Lynn hurts that, because ultimately if he doesn't get a head coaching job this year, he's going to get one in the next season or two. And what I don't want personally is this offense to finally get its legs underneath it, have a consistent passing game, and then have Anthony Lynn leave for a head coaching gig elsewhere next year. It would just put yourself in the same position you are this year.
Very good point.
So I need somebody at the offensive coordinator position that's here for at least the next 3-4 seasons before he even thinks about moving on and, you know, getting a head coaching gig someplace else.
You know, and typically if these guys, you know, get promoted and move on to head coaching positions, typically those teams are doing something well, right? So I personally wouldn't be opposed to bringing in someone or keeping someone on the staff, because chances are if he's doing something right, he's probably going to get a job elsewhere, which is okay with me because we built something there. You know, there's some sort of cohesion there. There's something to build upon. So I'm okay with that because that happens in the NFL every year to almost every team. I mean, look at the Patriots. Of course, that's a hard team to kind of, you know, use, but I mean, it seems they always have coordinators coming and going all the time, and they still continue to be successful. And of course, all that has to do with Tom Brady.
Right, Tom Brady.
Always comes back to the quarterback.
It does. It comes back to the quarterback, and when it doesn't, I guess it goes back to the head coach. And you're looking at both those guys as being, you know, two of the best of all time. Erik, let's head into some of this film study that you broke up for us here. We got some plays from a Sean McDermott defense that we'd like to kind of go over and get some analysis from and kind of see what we could expect this season when the Bills take the field.
All right, so we're just going to do, just a few plays of, the overall scheme, because everyone knows he's a base 4-3, 4-3 guy. So, and he uses, several different personnel groupings to get to his 4-3. Here's a simple, can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right, so here's a simple 4-3 play, and, it's a lot different, than last year. It's more of a one gap, defense, and you'll see it. And this is actually, and of course, they lost Kuechly for a while. So you'll see AJ Klein here and some of the footage. He's going to be in it. And I want people to take notice of that, because this is a backup player that is playing an important position in this defense. And, he's still – they barely missed a beat. Of course, he's not Luke Kuechly. But
right.
He filled in admirably. And you'll see what they do here with this, defensive front is on to the strength right here. You see both of these defensive linemen, they'll spill down. And what they want to do is occupy the offensive lineman here so that it opens up these gaps for the linebackers. And you'll see even Short over here, the D tackle, you'll see him, like, nice spin move. And look, all the gaps are accounted for. Where's that running back going to go?
Right. He's not going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, and I think this is important too, and what the Bills do with the weak side or the strong side position at linebacker.
Right.
I don't necessarily think you right now you have in the two guys that are currently under contract, Preston Brown and Reggie Ragland. I think those guys kind of fit in that middle, your Mike backer and maybe your weak side backer. But then, as you can see here, number 54, that's the kind of player. Is that Lorenzo Alexander next year? Because that guy is going to be more of a guy that's, as you see here, is going to rush the passer. Maybe not necessarily every down, but a guy that you're going to need that has that pass rushing capability. I don't think that's Zach Brown, and I don't think that's Preston Brown. And I think it's pretty obvious that Reggie Ragland is going to take over that Mike position moving forward. Now, is he athletic enough for this defense, especially when you look at 56, Luke Kuechly? I mean, you're talking about one of the most athletic linebackers in the league. I think this defense, as you're seeing here with this gap responsibilities, that you need to have a linebacker that not only has responsibility inside, but has gap control and gap consistency. And the one thing about Luke Kuechly, and you hear players talk about it all the time, guys like Le'Veon Bell, and being one of the most difficult linebackers to play because he's slow to fast. And a lot of linebackers are fast to slow. And it's fast to read, slow to react. He is really just a slow react. He doesn't overreact. He's very simple. And it's one of those guys that you have to kind of hope that Reggie Ragland can fill that role, but they're going to need elite linebacker play. I really do believe that they will, to be ultimately successful in this scheme.
Definitely. So, John, where are you putting Lawson? Where are you putting Lawson next year? You putting him, in a 3-point stance right here?
Yep.
Okay, so defensive end. So he can put here Darius as a shade tackle.
Yeah.
And then Kyle Williams right here. Nate, are you serious? You think about him as a cap casualty?
I really do.
Who's that? Who?
Kyle.
Kyle Williams.
What?
I don't necessarily think he becomes a cap casualty. I just think that if he chooses to retire, obviously it takes a hit. He's one of their most consistent players and potentially one of their best defensive players, but $8.5 million, you're looking at Geary Hughes making a cap hit number of, I think, 13, Marcel somewhere in the $17-18 million range.
Right.
That's just a lot of money in your front four. And, with the other positions of need, I am not going to feel as though like I am searching or I'm in deep trouble if Kyle Williams retires.
Right.
Ultimately, I think if they can figure out a way to restructure, that's one thing. But if I'm him, what's my motivation to restructure at this point?
Right. No, I hear you.
See, I don't see that. I mean, he's under contract till 2018, I think. So
I think he already restructured once, right?
Right. He just, I think prior to the year, right?
Yeah.
So, I think a reporter brought it up to him. Are you going to retire? And he's not ready to retire. He's just getting healthy. He had a big year this year.
I think the addition of McDermott likely helps him stay. I think it likely persuades him to stay because I don't think it's a full rebuild. If it was a full rebuild, I don't think Kyle's coming on for it, to be honest.
And I think he prefers the 4-3, to be honest with you, and I think he fits
I
better in
agree.
the 4-3.
I think he fits better in
So,
the 4-3 too. Yeah.
Right.
so I think he stays for sure.
So we kind of touched upon Aaron Williams too, and we'll go through some of the positions. We mentioned most of the defensive line, and of course Jerry Hughes is going to fit in here too. One thing that this defense does like to do, and you can see this is in the red zone, but they are in their base defense here, and they like to bring down their safety and put when they go into their 4-3 under. If they like, if there's a tight end here that is more of a pass catcher, they'll bring their tight end and just bring him down into the box, which that's not abnormal at all. But of course, we need safeties. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We need safeties, and we kind of touched on Gilmore prior to going live. Is he going to be this guy? Is he going to be this guy that's going to come down there and make a tackle? That's the only part of Gilmore's game that worries me. Is he going to be like that? Is he going to drop into the box and make a tackle? Because in this defense, corners are in cloud coverage a lot, which means, a lot of times they're responsible for the flats, and they have, run support responsibility. So, John, do you think he's the type of corner that is going to come down there and mix it up like this? Because if he isn't, I mean, you got to let him go. You can't pay him, 11 to 14 million to just do to not make tackles. You got to have him out there making tackles too.
I think, Eric, my stance on Gilmore. So it's I'm letting him walk, bro, and for two reasons. Is number one, I don't think he's consistent enough on an every game basis. I mean, we saw I think it was the Miami game where he threw a shoulder and the guy went 56 yards for a touchdown, which was totally unacceptable. I mean, to me, move on from that player. You'll get a good compensatory pick for that, especially if someone pays him a big contract, which I'm not willing to do.
Right.
I get it that we're short at that position. We are, and that's clearly defined. But fortunately for us, is that this is a outstanding year for defensive backs.
It is.
Draft. Like, I haven't seen a draft this deep at safety specifically, and at corner for that matter, in 10 years probably. So that kind of worked in our favor. I wouldn't mind, maybe entertaining a free agent that's played in the 4-3, that's maybe has a little bit of some of these types of schemes under his belt already,
right?
And bringing him in, because for $10-12 million, like we're saying, you're gonna make someone like Kyle Williams a cap casualty, but keep Gilmore, who's consistently underperforming. I can't buy into that philosophy.
Right, and it's something that we didn't do a lot last year is cornerback blitzes. I think Darby and Gilmore combined only blitz 3 times, and that's not abnormal for a Rex Ryan defense. But this defense actually sends their cornerbacks quite often, and you'll see this play here. And I want to start from the beginning, because the thing I love about this defense is, of course, you got the 2 high safeties, so it's a light box. There's only 7 in the box, and that's a nickel corner right there. But there's a lot of movement here and here, so they're shifting and catching the attention of Derek Carr. And what ends up happening is he's worried about this side of the field and what this safety is doing, and then out of nowhere, this corner is blitzing. And it actually, watch.
He gave it away, though. He gave it away, that corner. If you watch last second.
Yeah.
Last second. But I doubt that Derek Carr is looking that way right at that very moment.
The funny thing, Nate, watch this. Watch how many times he checks to his left here. Watch how many times. This is what he's kind of confused from the coverage. He's watching the safety. He's looking to his left. Look at him several different times. He's looking to his left. So he knows that he's going to that receiver.
Yeah, you're right.
He came off the guy, probably a little too early, but that's what I love about this defense, the confusion that it can cause. Because, and if they want to blitz, they can blitz. They blitzed almost 27% of the time last year, which is kind of high for a cover 2 type defense. So, I mean, they can bring the pressure.
My thought behind it too is you have sort of the same type of corner in Ron Darby. This is not a physical guy. This is honestly, I think Ron Darby has a really good chance to play really well in this defense, not from a physicality standpoint, but a situational standpoint, meaning a lot of trap coverages and a lot of, as you mentioned, cloud coverages, where he's going to be the kind of guy that's aggressive and good. When I think last year or 2 seasons ago now, when Darby was at his best in his rookie season, it was when he was almost a little over aggressive. It was when he was willing to when he allowed his instincts to take over. And he's not exactly the kind of guy you want to have blitzing, or he's not exactly the kind of guy you want to have, that's going to be making tackles out of the backfield. Though that's not his game. He's not very big. He's not very physical, but he is good in those sort of trap coverages where he can be aggressive. So I think you need a cornerback on the other side that does some things different. You look at, I think Sean Smith is a perfect example of the kind of guy that you would want to get for this other cornerback position, because you want a guy with a little bit more ranginess, a little longer, a little bit more physical. I don't know that you can those kind of guys grow on trees, but it's something that they need to explore.
John, would you? It's funny. Opposite Darby, you want a bigger corner, or what kind of corner are you looking for in this type of defense?
You basically just described Gilmore as far as the long range guys, stuff like that. And I just want a guy that's a playmaker.
Yeah.
I want a playmaker now, a guy that can cover, a guy that can run. I want a playmaker, a guy with awareness, because that's what we need. In this defense, you're going to be looking at the quarterback a lot more than you are, let's say, in Rex Ryan's defense, where you're just turning your hips and running with the receiver. Right. You're going to be keeping most of the stuff in front of you. So as a cornerback, you need to have good awareness, you need to have good instincts, and you need to be able to kind of be a step ahead of certainly a guy that has
action.
Right.
Sorry,
no, I agree.
I just get excited when I watch these things.
The thing I like about, his scheme as well, of course, there's the double A gap pressure. That's what he's known for. And when you study, his lineage, this is not surprising, and they show a lot of double A gap pressures, and they get a lot of sacks that way, but not just by bringing these guys, they also it just puts stress on the offensive lineman. And, I asked Richie about it yesterday, incognito, and he said, it is definitely all the rage right now, and coordinators are getting jobs because they know how to do this and bluff this correctly, because you'll see they bring Klein here. But this is what worries me, guys, and you guys are totally going to agree with this. The range at linebacker. Yeah. Watch Thompson, all right? This is just a normal, cover 3 buzz. So it's a cover 2 shell, but this safety drops down into the hole, and it's cover 3 deep, all right? But this linebacker right here, Shaq Thompson, look how much ground he covers.
Yes.
It's nuts, and he's taken away the passing strength to the field.
You're talking about, though, in Shaq, that's what's his name, Shaq Thompson, right?
Yes.
You're talking about one of the more athletic linebackers in the league, and he's very young. That's the kind of guy, though, that I think Stuart Craven's the type of player is what this defense, I think, is really lacking right now, and it's. Maybe that's Zach Brown. Maybe he can play the position. But the problem with the Shaq Thompson compared to Zach Brown is Shaq Thompson can bring that pass rush element. To me, Zach Brown cannot. So
that's a good point.
What do you do there? You know what I'm saying? So that's to me the difficult part is going to be finding out who fills out the rest of this roster in the linebacker position, because as much as I tend to agree that this defense – the personnel fits a 4-3 scheme a little bit better right now than a 3-4. There are positions, linebacker and safety, that don't exactly. And you have a guy like Adolphus Washington, who I think is a much better fit in a 3-4 defensive end than I think.
Yeah.
In like a 3 tech.
I think he's
inside guy.
Yeah.
I think his role is going to be interesting. And same with a guy like Leger Duzable. He's going to be a free agent. But a guy like Darrell Worthy, on the other hand, I think he's a perfect 4-3 defensive tackle.
And he's already under contract too.
Right, exactly. So that's the kind of guy moving forward that we're going to have to – but you're right, that Shaq Thompson, that sort of player is not on this defense right now.
Right.
And for me, guys, it's not to cut you off, Eric,
no, that's
but fine. For me, when you're running a 4-3 front, you're relying specifically from your pass rush, from your defensive ends, right? So for me, I'm not placing as much weight on my linebacker being able to blitz. I prefer my linebacker to be able to cover in this particular scheme. And like you said, Nate, do we have that guy? Is it Zach Brown? See, if Zach Brown can't rush the passer, that's okay with me, because that's why we went out and got a Shaq Lawson. That's why we have a Jerry Hughes.
Yeah.
Those are the primarily that I'm looking for to rush the passer. Occasionally I'll have, a 5-man blitz, what have you, and bring another guy, but we don't have that guy that can shoot out like Erik just showed in this clip. And keep in mind, guys, Shaq Thompson and Thomas Davis, they're hybrid safeties, okay? Those guys came out of college as safeties, right? So they grew into that linebacker position, so they can run to begin with. So to me, Zach Brown would be a player I would think about keeping just for the fact that he can run with basically almost receivers.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, we saw him track down Edelman at the beginning of the season, 70 yards down the field.
Yeah.
So we certainly need a guy that can cover, because if you look at the other two linebackers we have on the roster currently, I don't know. I don't know what I have in Reggie Ragland.
We don't.
Right?
I mean, we know he can blitz, but we don't know coming off the injury.
Right. Not only is he a rookie, but he's coming off a serious injury. Okay. We do know we have in Preston Brown. I mean, he could play in the box and things like that, and he can lay some lumber. But we need a guy that can play sideline to sideline, because that's what we're going to need in this defense. A guy that can.
It depends. It depends, though, John. It depends, because I think you're thinking of it from a perspective of Ron Rivera's defense, and old school cover too. Last season, listen to this. Last season, all right, the three linebackers, outside linebackers for the Panthers, all right, Thomas Davis, he rushed the passer 101 times. That was 15% of his snaps. He had 20 total pressures. Shaq Thompson, he rushed 38 times, caused 6 pressures. So he basically rushed a passer 13% of the time. And then A.J. Klein, who only played 189 snaps, he rushed a passer 17 times. That's 9%. He only had 1 pressure. But it depends. It depends on what type of, how he schemes for these players, because, they're not drop back. They're not, cover 2 type coverage linebackers. So how is he going to overcome that? Because they're also not that good at blitzers. You guys kind of touched upon that. Mm-hmm. It's going to be an interesting mix on whether they bring Zach Brown back all together, but also, how they scheme these guys, because that was important for them. Their linebacking blitz was big last year, and because, the front 4 wasn't getting the pressure, and they were trying to take the pressure off of those rookies that were outside starting at corners. They
don't have the ends in Carolina like they did when they had Greg Hardy and Charles Johnson, things like that. They have Juan Short, who's a hell of a player, and I think Star Latulele, who's also a good player. I know they may have someone else in there too, but they didn't have the edge rushers like I feel like we have.
Right.
To me, Jerry Hughes is a 4-3 pass rush defensive end.
Yeah.
Okay. Period. I need him around the line of scrimmage. I don't want him covering. I mean, he can run, but I don't want him doing that. I want him around the line of scrimmage. Same with Shaq. I want him around the line of scrimmage, rushing the quarterback, playing the run. And, to do anything else with those particular players is doing an injustice for them. And we have the inside studs to hold up. So, for me, we need a rangy linebacker. And I don't know if Ragland's that guy. And we need help in the back end. So there's some work to do with Doug Whaley. Doug Whaley, okay, this, not only this hire, but this offseason is going to certainly, I mean, we already knew this, is going to define him. I think if he doesn't put together a quality team this year, no question he has to be evaluated and see if his job needs to be terminated. Because, I mean, there's the talent I feel like is there, and maybe it does have something to do with, Rex not being able to develop these players. But I'm starting to think like, geez, do we have the right guys in place? Did we draft the right guys? I don't know. So I'm interested to see how this free agency and draft plays out, especially with a 4-3 team, because you can fit more players in a 4-3 than you can a 3-4. It's hard to build a 3-4 defense.
It is.
You can't just say, oh, I'm going to play a 3-4 defense. That takes years and luck to come up with.
I mean, I think Pittsburgh's the perfect example. I mean, how long have they been drafting players to be fit in that 3-4 scheme? You're talking about Stephon Tuitt. You're talking about Jarvis Jones. You're talking about Bud Dupree. You're talking about all these players, especially in their front 7, Ryan Shazier. These are all guys that have taken a little while to kind of learn the nuance of the 3-4, but really executed well. And I think right now they're hitting a stride, but because they have great players that fit that 3-4 scheme.
Right.
And it's the culture with them too, that they can keep it rolling. But go ahead, Eric.
The scheme it's going to work. It may take a year to get the right guys in that scheme and get them, because it's a simple scheme especially compared to Rex Ryan's, but it is also one of those schemes that they have to be coached up really well. They have to hone those techniques. Little things like on this play, this is just a disguise. They look like they're going to blitz, but they're actually only bringing 4, and they get a a sack fumble here. But you'll see just the small little things like how this DB is just moving, little things like that, and he jumps into the 4-3 under, all right, and then just drops the zone. But you'll see how these DBs constrict and take away that seam route's taken care of. And just, I mean, look at the spacing. I mean, right now, the only guy that's going to be coming open is here. But if you look at the quarterback here, he's already under pressure, So the timing of the plays, and this is just cover 3. It's nothing difficult, but everything in concert together, it makes a heck of a difference. And I mean, you see the stress that this puts on the offensive line. They think there's a blitz coming. Really, it's just, it's a 4-man rush. It's something, like Schwartz used to do. He just relied on that front 4 to do their job.
And how similar is Schwartz's defense to McDermott's defense? How similar is that, or is it the same? I mean,
the wide 9 scheme is going to be a little bit different. It's a little bit different spacing. Mm-hmm. Its emphasis is just in a little bit different of a place. I mean, but the same idea is that you want to get pressure with your front 4. I think that's really kind of where the league is going. A lot of people, especially on defensive coordinators moving forward, there is so much talent. There's so much athleticism on the offensive side of the ball. All of the rules are tilted towards the offensive team now. They need to keep guys back in coverage to cover those kind of guys, especially with the kind of quarterbacks that are on the league now that are moving, that can extend plays. You need guys to be in coverage to stay with that extension of the play. And I think that's why you're seeing more teams rely now on a 4-man or sometimes at the very most a 5-person pass rush, opposed to just having exotic blitzes. That's why part of me thought that Rex Ryan's defense and his scheme had sort of passed by the relevance and the now sort of offenses that you're seeing in the league, these spread looks, a lot of read option looks, a lot of athletic quarterbacks. You can't be overly complex when you're trying to blitz when you're defending quarterbacks like Cam Newton, when you're defending quarterbacks like Tyrod Taylor. And there's more of them all these young guys that are coming in the league, they're all athletic now. All of them can move and extend plays. And what you can't afford to do is have 6 guys being sent on a play and leaving, 5 back in coverage against 4 players. That's just not going to work in today's NFL.
Right. And this is one of those plays. Here's your wide 9 here, and it's just a 4-man rush, and they drop to a 3 deep zone. And it's a very simple defense, but I mean, they get pressure. And this was what kind of surprised me. Paul Soliai, I remember that guy, 350, 360-pound D tackle. Look what he does to Osemele here. This is kind of a side note, but when I saw this, I was quite surprised because Osemele is the best guard in the game right now. Look at him just toss him. I mean, it's remarkable. So, I mean, they rush 4 and eventually pressure Carr here. And Davis, who's dropping to his hook to curl zone, eventually takes away Cooper and then, picks the guy off over the middle, and he's off to the races. So, I mean, you're right. I think it's the trend now, rush 4 and, play defense. And do enough disguising and coverages to confuse a quarterback, to have him hold the ball like this and have him make a mistake. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right, fellas, any final words here? Your thoughts on McDermott? Your thoughts on, what we're seeing here?
My thoughts, what I've read on him is like, I know enough about him, but, I did a little research since he's become our coach. And what I like is that he's got a good pedigree behind him. He's played the game, okay?
Right.
And in the college level. He was a state champion in wrestling. Eric, I'm sure Eric will appreciate that.
You killing me, man. That was one of my points. Go ahead.
Eric was like 1,000-0 in wrestling when we were kids. He was the best, and he gave it up for football, which I understand. But that, and then it seems like he's a smart guy. He might be ahead of the curve in some of the innovative stuff. It looks like he's in tune with what's going on around the league, as far as some of the nuances and things like that. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. And at the end of the day, I'm excited for a fresh start. Eric knows how I feel about the last regime. I was never on board with that. So to me, this is a fresh start. And I'm just interested to see how this offseason plays out with some of the additions, whether it's the coaching staff or the the players that we bring in or let go. So a lot to think about throughout this off season, and it's very exciting to me. So I'm pretty pumped.
I mean, I'm happy with the hire. I think there's a lot to be determined still, who they bring in on defense and offense as far as coordinators go. I think that'll determine on how well-rounded, of course, this staff is, and all those little pieces that we actually care about, the coaching, the guys that are positional coaches, the guys that are going to be doing hands-on work with, the struggling secondary we had, the guys on the back end, working on the pass rushes. So, those D-line coaches, those positional coaches are just as important, if not more, than the D coordinator themselves. So, and of course, who's going to be the quarterback's coach? All right. So, and things like that. So, I do like the whole wrestling thing. He was mocked a lot about that, and laughed at, as far as Pagula, making that statement. But I do think it means something, because having wrestled my whole life, it does bring a certain type of discipline, having to suck weight and all that stuff, and wrestle a ton of matches in one day. You do learn a lot from that. And guess what? Mentally, it is the best sport. I don't care what you say about it. Mentally, it is the toughest sport, because guess what? It's just you out on that mat. So I think he has a mentality, and from listening to interviews today and yesterday, it sounds like guys that have worked with him or even played football with him, they say that he's a mentally strong person. He's a guy that, of course, is detail oriented, which everyone wants to be detail oriented, and he does come off that way. But at the very most, and the thing that I like the most about him is he seems like a teacher. And you can see that in the smallest details of when you watch his players on defense. So I do like the hire, and hopefully it works out.
Yeah, I mean, I like the hire. At the end of the day, if I was at that press conference tomorrow, my first question would be, who's the quarterback? How are you going to choose who the quarterback is? When are you going to choose who the quarterback is? And, because I just don't think, no matter what happens on the defensive side of the ball this year, I still think that when you looked back at a lot of games last year, I agree the defense costed this team on a number of occasions. And a lot of times it wasn't the offense's fault, but they're symbiotic. They both work together. And until you have consistency on both sides of the ball, this thing's going to kind of keep on the same path it's been. So who's the quarterback, and how are you going to coach him are the two things that I'm going to be looking at, especially moving forward here.
Definitely.
All right. Well, that does it here for another episode of the Cover One podcast. You can visit our website, cover1.net, and check out all of our now it was pre-off season. Now it's off season. We're definitely in the grid of this whole thing. And, draft stuff coming up soon here, Senior Bowl stuff. So we'll have all that for you at cover1.net. So make sure you visit us there. And, gentlemen, thank you very much. And, until next time.